Mayor Stayton, and I'm ready to order a call to order for a council meeting Monday, August 17th, 2020 at 7 o'clock, wherever you are. And we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. All right. First item of business. Let's see who we got here tonight. We've got all the council except for Councilor David Patty, who's not with us this evening. We've got, I see the library director. We've got public works. We've got finance. Is the police chief here?
Yes. Yes, he is. He's sitting
Okay.
6 feet away from me over here.
Okay. You just throw these names around. Okay, so we're kind of ready to go. First item of business this evening, folks, is a consent agenda from the August 3rd, 2020 council minutes. What would you folks like to do with those?
Mr. Mayor?
Anyone, please? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second, please?
I second. Councilor Hook.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Who had the second?
Councilor Hook.
Councilor Hook, okay. And Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Yes.
On that motion?
Yes. Councilor McDonald?
Yes.
Councilor Ort? She's muted.
Yes. I tried to do the space bar. Yes.
Councilor Hook?
Yes.
Sorry. Bad timing. Councilor Mullen?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item this evening, as we all thumb through all this, is under general business, the Shaft Road Golf Club Road roundabout design, and Mr. Ludwig, Public Works.
Give me a second so I can get him on here.
I can start.
Where did he go? Yeah, he's not.
The COVID-19 global pandemic has created financial uncertainty for city officials, staff, and state residents.
Plans.
The issue before the council this evening is should the city postpone soliciting a request for proposals for consulting services to design a roundabout on the Shaft Road, Golf Club Road, Wilco Road interchange? There be the question.
Mayor, it looks like we may have lost Lance.
Lost.
So, yeah, he's not on anymore. I was looking through our list.
I can't. He said in the chat, I can't hear anyone, so he might have gotten off and
Okay, yeah. So we could probably move to the next agenda item until we, oh, no, that's Dan hopping on, I was going to say. We could move to the next agenda item and come back.
You just go through it, too.
Totally up to you.
I don't mind reading all this stuff. It's an easily understandable thing. It's a.
Keith said that he could start to go over it. He's here also. So.
Is he there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'll scoot over here.
Well, let's get him. Let's get him. Oh, it's fairly easy to understand, I think.
Yeah, so, basically we've been talking about the COVID situation, COVID-19, and the uncertainty of our financial situation. Part of the long-term goals of the city in terms of our economic development plan and in terms of, unlocking potential of the city is to look at that Golf Wilco Shaft intersection. So before you, what we wanted to bring was, approval to move forward with putting this item out to bid and to begin the process of looking at starting to get the bids in and looking to see whether we're going to move forward right now or we wanted to wait. I think one of the concerns, and I'll see if Lance hops on here, is the time frame it's going to take us in order to put this out to bid, in order to go through that process, and the time frame it's going to take for the work to be completed, which could be 9 months to a year in lengths of time. So the thought process with the city is kind of twofold. One, the money that's going to be needed to complete this project, but two, the opportunities that we may have in terms of if there is an economic stimulus package in trying to recover from COVID. Generally speaking, the federal government has looked at projects that open up or create infrastructure needs for the city. So having something that is, in theory, shovel-ready would be a potential benefit for us seeking those funds. Now, there's no guarantee, of course, there will be any monies in the future, but that's sort of the thought process we have, and to have plans ready to go in case there was future development that came in that did that. So the reason we were having this and bringing this forward was the idea of talking with council to see if you're comfortable going ahead and moving forward with the first step, which is to put this out to bid. The next step would be for us to go through that process and actually go through approval. That'll give us more time to know where we're sitting in terms of our tax revenue, in terms of economic impacts of COVID. So with that, I will attempt to answer any questions. And hold on, I got a text, so let me scroll over here. So Lance said he is restarting his computer, so we can ask questions of me, or we can move forward, or we can wait for him to hop on. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Modern technology.
Yes.
Keith, if you can answer this question, or if we need to wait for Lance, that's fine. So can you give us the timeline of, let's say that we did move forward, we put this out to bid. What's the timeline? Like, how long does that usually take? And then how long after we accept a bid, or, you know, when we get the bids in and then we accept one, and then how long is that good for? Like, when does that kind of expire? Or
Yeah, gosh, I've read the bid documents today, as a matter of fact. But basically, what we're looking at is a time frame of getting this out, which I think would be, I think Lance was looking at in a week or two to put this out, and then the 30-day period for that to happen, and then a period for the committee to go over and select this and then bring this back forward. So you're probably looking at a time frame of October before we'd be ready to move forward with potentially, going forward with a bid or approving a bid through council. The amount of the bid is going to be such that it'll need to come forward for your approval. So this, in theory, will give us time to really look at this. So you're looking at a multi-month process just to go out to bid at this point, to see if potentially we wanted to move forward, which will give us more time to have a better understanding of where we're at financially as well. Did that answer the question?
yes, and then the second part is, if we did get a bid, how long would that bid be good for? Like, if we were to sit on it and kind of wait for an opportunity, how long would that be good for?
I want to say it's 60 days after the bid is done. It might be 90. Yeah. I'm sorry, I just read that. I should remember, but I think it's 60 to 90 days from the time that happens that we would have a chance to move forward. The bids would still be valid. Dan, you read it too. Are you on here where we could maybe pull you in?
Yes, my recollection is the draft RFP says that the proposals must be good for 60 days.
60 days, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So this is more of a budgeting question. So the estimated cost for this thing, we've earmarked it. We have forecasted this as a potential project. If we decide to kind of postpone, and do we have the ability down the road that something else comes up, some other issue that we need to divert or reallocate those funds? Do we have the ability to move those funds from that bucket, that, that estimated cost for the roundabout, to something else that might need or take priority? Or is it specifically in that fund?
So this would specifically be in the street fund, and the SDCs that would be part of this as well. So the bigger issue would be, this is one fund that I think we have some concern about revenue, because some of this comes from gas tax revenue as well. So that could have an impact on our ability to move forward in terms of funding. But what this will allow is, and Lance can kind of nod his head and agree, if we were to agree to start this process, we're looking at late August for this to go out, September for the bids to be due, the process to happen. So we would have until probably October or November before we'd be ready to potentially bid. I think the second meeting in October is when we were tentatively looking at potentially bringing this back, depending on how the bids came out. So, But this would strictly be in the street fund and in the SDC funds as well. So, and that street fund is one, like I said, that we're nervous about.
Keith, quick question on this. If I read this correctly, this $325,000 is just toward the design.
Correct.
This doesn't get us a roundabout or even toward a bit of a roundabout. It's just a design for one.
That's correct. Lance,
Is everyone comfortable with how a roundabout works? Has anyone else ever been on the inside lane of a street in Paris, about an 8-lane street that has a roundabouts on it, and you're on the inside and you're trying to get to the outside?
Luckily, we're not going to put the Arc de Triomphe, I think, is the one you're talking about. We're not going to put that in the middle, so hopefully we won't have that problem of the 8 lanes. But
and Mr. Mayor, this will be a 1-lane roundabout, so it'd be pretty tough to get confused. You take a right or you keep going.
Yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities for confusion, but I agree that would minimize it. Yeah. Go ahead, Lance. Nice to see you this evening.
Okay, I apologize for my delay. Had a little bit of a computer malfunction. Sounds like Keith took care of it, so I'll just sit and nod.
Questions? Are there other questions for Lance? The question is, do we decide to go ahead with this or not? This design, at least.
What I will say is I came in at the end of Keith's discussion, and I would agree with this timeline. I would figure I would have this out to bid probably within the next 2 weeks. September would be, I figure, 3 weeks to get something to us, and it'd probably take us another 2 or 3 weeks to determine who we want to interview. So we're probably talking November. If it's not the second meeting in October, it might be the first meeting of November before we bring something forward to you. And by that time, we'll have a little better handle on our finances, but probably won't be a complete handle on them. You know, we'll just know a little bit. We'll have a little bit more information.
Okay. Lance, if we decided to do this, would that $325,000 give us? It would give us a design for a roundabout. Would it have all the surveying done in it, where everything is marked out and ready to go? This thing could go to a bid on a project.
Yes, that 325 includes construction plans,
Okay.
specs, engineer's estimate, and help putting it out to bid for a contractor to bid on to construct it. The consultant will also help with us answering questions or creating addendums or change orders throughout the bidding process. At that point, after we select a contractor, we would enter a separate contract if we so choose to have them perform some of the contract administration, the construction surveying, some of the construction inspection, that kind of thing. But that would be a separate contract after we hire a contractor.
Okay.
But this 325 gets us to the point of we've got track hose out on Schaff and Wilco starting to construct. That's what it'll do for us.
Another question. Do we need to buy property to do this?
Well, one of the good things about this, and one of the reasons we need to do it, is just for that. We don't really know. We have ideas what it's going to look like, but we haven't had a survey done out there. I don't know what the center line of Schaff and Wilco is, the exact monument. I don't know what that transition is going to look like into and out of going north, south, or east, west. So that's what this does for us. I think Dan and I and John Ashley did a pretty good job with our dedication of the property to the northwest and to the southwest. But we covered our heinies, I should say, by saying when we do design this, if we need more land, that the developer will have to step up and give that to us.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. I don't know where all these questions are coming from me, but let's say we get this thing designed And then, I don't know, this is kind of an iffy. Um, Lance, how long could we sit on this thing with the plan, but just not able or ready to dedicate the funding to have it built? How long could we reasonably sit on this plan?
Well, I think for the most part, we could sit on it for a while. The only thing that would change is if we changed our design standards.
Uh-huh.
If the MUCTCD, the National Manual for Traffic Control Devices and Roundabout Design and Warrants changes, or the AASHTO changes, so which is the federal, basically the national guide for designing highways, state highways and roundabouts and so forth. As long as those things don't change, we're good, and we could be 10 years.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
And if something does change, it would be, I don't think it would be huge, because this is really a newer design process. And one of the people that I've been working with on this sits on the national board for roundabout designs, very knowledgeable, and where we're going with these. So I would think that we're in pretty good hands right now.
Okay, all right, thank you, Lance. Other
Mr.
questions?
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, please. Somebody.
Lance, this is Councilor Ort.
Yeah.
Lance, Keith, maybe my question was misunderstood. So I was actually asking, I just want to clarify, I was asking along the same lines as the mayor. So once we get the document, so after we put the bids out, we accept one and they give us the document, so you're saying that document or the drawings and everything they do is, unless there's substantial change, we can sit on that and wait for an opportunity to use it.
Yeah, I've done that before in the past too. I mean, you're going to design construction plans. If we don't, and they're going to be approved. Okay, so we're not just going to have them design it and we're going to leave it. We're going to go through the approval process with those plans. So Marion County is going to look at it. They're going to approve it. They're going to sign off on those plans. We're going to review it. We're going to sign off on those plans. So we'll have an approved set of construction documents, that being the plans and the specifications and an engineer's estimate for that project in 2021. If we wait 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I don't think there's going to be a problem with it, because design standards are not going to change that significantly. You may have minor design changes, but we can take care of those with plan changes. It's not going to cost $325,000. You might end up spending $10,000 for a redesign on certain things, maybe, and that's just a worst case scenario. More than likely, you're going to be able to construct it with the plans that you have.
Hey, Lance, I think one of the questions I tried to answer, but just to make sure we have the right answer for the council, if they were to approve this and they were to approve when we go out to bid, and let's say that second meeting in October, how long will it take the contractor to get this to the point of completion?
We're looking at, my original thought was we were going to go out in August and approve it in September, and we were talking about having it done in June, the complete set. So I'm thinking probably July of next year. However, I think you and I in our discussions, I informed you that most of the time grant applications, things like that, are due in the spring. And so we will be far enough along in the spring. If something does pan out and there are grants or federal dollars available, we'll have enough information available to apply for one of those right now. That'll give us 6 months. They're going to have the alignment down. They're going to have preliminary drawings done, enough for us to go and put in an application for federal dollars, if that was to come to fruition.
Okay.
But the final document, you're probably looking around 9 months, okay, from whenever we start.
Lance, one more question from me at least. Would this design, would we ask the designers of this roundabout to anticipate the county 3-laning golf club from Shaft out to the golf course? route to Highway 22?
The county will be involved in this project from the get-go. We'll probably have a kickoff meeting. Whoever gets this project, county will be in that room. They will be involved in this project from the get-go, so everybody's on the same page.
Okay,
We're going to be asking for county assistance.
good.
We may not get it, but it is their road, so they should be involved. They're both county roads.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or thoughts of Lance?
And I'll just say, we've had communications with the county already about this and our plans, and they've been supportive, so.
Okay. Okay, we've heard probably as much as we're going to find out. We've got some options. We can propose the roundabout project till sometime in the future, or we can instruct Public Works to continue the roundabout design project, and then motions in whichever direction the council wants to move on this. So, anyone ready to do something? Anyone?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
going back to like a budget question, maybe this is for Susanna. Do we have that, and forgive me, I haven't looked, do we have that money in our funds? Or is this one of those like where the money comes in at different times? I apologize for not a very clear question, but is this money that we have to possibly spend on this?
$220,000 of it we have in SDCs. It's sitting in an account already. The remainder is coming from our transportation fund. I'll let Susanna talk about that, but as of now, we have gas taxes coming in every month. We're down a little bit, but again, it comes in monthly. So, you have to watch those. Susanna, you can add to that.
We did budget for the project, and we did budget a reduced revenue for that fund. But like they were telling you on the timeline, by the time the bids come in, by November-ish, we'll have a little better idea if we are anywhere in range of what we actually budget. And that's when we would really make more financial decisions if we could actually move forward with the project.
Can I follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So just really quick, one more time. So we can agree to move forward with the bidding process, get those bids in, and then we don't have to necessarily, we're not right now deciding that we're going to do the project. Right now, we're deciding to go out to get bids. We don't necessarily have to select one of those bids if by that time we figure out that,
That's correct.
this isn't the right way to go.
I want to say yes, and I'll let Keith answer this, but I would like to caution you. We don't want to get into the habit of putting jobs out to bid and then just not going forward on them, because people will refrain from coming to our town and giving us bids. So it's just something to think about.
Okay. I know I totally get that. It's just, it's hard sometimes, if we see that our situation is a little worse off than we thought, then we might make a different decision than we're making today.
Correct.
I understand.
So
that.
I'm not going into it saying, oh no, we're not going to pick one. I'm just saying we still reserve the right to change our minds if we need to.
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question because of what Councilor Ort was asking. Lance, are there any ways that, well, it's twofold actually, two questions. The first one is, does it cost a lot of money for us to go out for the bids, for you to do that portion of the project of working to get the bids ready?
No, most of it's primarily internal costs. So we have advertising, probably $100, something like that.
Oh, okay. And then is there a way that we can maybe scale back part of the project if for some reason we don't think that we'll have the funds to do the full thing, or do you foresee already that, you know, we probably, at the rate that things are coming in, that we probably could afford to do the project?
I'm going to be completely honest. Once you start this project, you don't want to stop it. You just don't, because there's so many things dynamic that are going to be going on with this project. I have a 50-page RFP. The scope is probably 35 of it. Just different tasks that need to be done to get this done and get it done right. I don't think it's something that you want to stop midstream. The second question, I think Susanna and I think Keith answered it. We will be watching this every month. We had monthly meetings because of the COVID. And that's not just for the street fund, it's for all the enterprise funds. Each month we sit down and we look at what's coming in our utility billing, and we see how we sit with our proposed budget, and we discuss ways of reducing projects if we need to. So that's something we're going to be doing on a month-by-month basis. And I will say that, again, it's going to be a 9-month process. If we start in November, somewhere in there, we're probably looking at next fiscal year before we finish it. Okay, so we're going to have probably 9 months of gas taxes coming in to help contribute to this. And really, we're looking at $123,000 of gas taxes. I think Susanna said in the last 5 months, the lowest month that we've had for gas taxes was like $32,000. So most of the time, it's like $41,000 to $48,000 that we have coming in monthly. I guess last month was it was May or June, it was 31,000 something. So we're going to be having, hopefully $30,000 to $40,000 coming in monthly. We'll need another $123,000 in the next 9 months to pay for this. So again, we'll be watching it on a month-to-month basis. That's all. That's really all I can say. I mean, I think we'll be watching it very closely, and obviously, if things go really downhill and things change drastically, we can cut the project off.
Is it kind of important for us tonight to be thinking of the project as it's proposed as just the design for this thing? This is not the project. This is not the construction of the roundabout and whatever else goes with it. This is just the design.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a really quick analogy. Last year or the year before last, we had the master plan done of the Mill Creek Park. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to go out and look for money, right? This is exactly what that is. We're going to have this roundabout designed so we can take this project and we can go out and look for federal dollars, state dollars, wherever have you, but we'll have it ready to go. This is called a shovel-ready project.
Okay.
And so that's really what we're after.
Okay. All right. So as long as everybody's not confused with that, with project and construction and a new traffic thing. Okay. What do you folks want to do?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to move forward with the roundabout project as planned.
Okay. All
A
right.
second.
There's a motion and a second to direct staff to move forward with the roundabout project as planned. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to be really clear that the reason that I'm making this motion is because of how well all of the city staff explained our, financial situation and how well they're going to be looking at things. And I just think that if we can move forward, which it sounds like we can, that we should.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions or comments or thoughts? And if not, let's go to a vote. Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Yes. Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Another action item
Thank
is
you, Lance.
I'm sorry. Question? No. The next action item, a revised temporary COVID-19 public meeting procedures. Staff report, probably Keith, I'm thinking. Maybe not, or you.
It will be me.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you, you have revised temporary public meeting procedures for COVID-19. At the last council meeting, you had expressed that you were interested in seeing some updates specifically regarding public comment. So we sat down and did some review, and before you, you have a proposed draft, and happy to take questions.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Alyssa, so thank you so much for putting this together. First off, public comment is really important, and I'm a strong advocate for being a leader, Stayton being a leader in robust inclusion of public comment. One of the things that when I was looking at this that I have a concern over is I feel like we've kind of done a disservice to residents and partners and stakeholders by not reading aloud written testimony that we've received. And so I'd really like for us to be able to read the testimony aloud in its entirety going forward. Is there a way we can put that in there?
So I don't see why it couldn't be. I would caution you, I have heard, I guess if you're talking about general public comment or public hearing testimony or both, let me start there by asking that.
I think that that's a really good thing to clarify, because I know that some of those things can be lots and lots of pages. So perhaps we could have like a cutoff of a word count, maybe something that would be equal to 3 minutes of public testimony, so that if it's over that, then it wouldn't be read aloud.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'd have to, I don't know how I would come to that, figuring out what that would be. I have heard of a situation in another community here in Oregon where they spent 2 hours reading all the public comment they received out loud. And so it's just
maybe like one page, 1 page in 12 font, single spaced, like so that they can't just like cram it all in 8 font, and then we have to read the teeny tiny words.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to hear it. And then, if it goes over that one page, like we just won't read it at all. We're not going to read partial public comment because then you lose context. So if that's possible, I know that it would probably help people. And then I was also curious if, when it's reasonably possible, if we could keep our public comment open for additional written testimony to be submitted for the council to review on issues. Probably that's not available for hearings because we usually vote on that kind of stuff. But if there's just a general like informational type thing, or just, people want to comment like they normally could in meetings before when they were in person, that they could, submit it written. I think that would be good, because at least then we'd be getting feedback from the community, and it would be, stuff that could be posted to the website as, additional public comment received, but not necessarily then read aloud post the meeting.
So, okay, so what you're saying, I just want to clarify. So what you're saying is if we receive comment outside of that window before the meeting, that we would just go ahead and post that on the website also.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And not read that aloud at like the next meeting or anything, just that it would be available for people.
Okay. Okay. I understand.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to echo Councillor Hook's points that public comment is really important to me. I think in order to do our jobs well, hearing from the people that we represent is really important. I appreciate you putting in the ability for people to video or audio conference call in. Thank you for that, Alyssa. My thoughts on the written testimony is if it can be, I like what Councilor Hook said about having it available on the website as public, as public comment, and so for people to review, so that the community can get kind of a context of, what we have received, as written testimony, and then also, how that attributes to how we make our decisions. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be read into the record if we are giving people the opportunity to either call in or do a video, because at that point, then they're able to do that as well. And then a question for you, is it possible if people want to submit either a video or a recording, and that way if they are not able to
That actually
call in at a certain time, we could listen to it if they want their voices to be heard as opposed to written?
Potentially, yes. I'm just going through my head of what maybe we have options of, and potentially if they submitted a video, we could share. I can share my screen and play the video. Possibly there's some technology things there I'd have to probably
That just came into my head
but
right as I was saying it, and then it would have to fit into that 3-minute window.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be drawn on. Or
Mr. Mayor.
I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, go ahead, somebody who.
Yeah, it's Councilor Hook. So I love that idea. I'm a little worried about any precedent that we might be setting by allowing people to submit video instead of doing it in real time. And then I also worry about if we don't read the testimony aloud. We put in this document that we strongly suggest people do written testimony. So I can see that, people would probably want to come and be on the phone if their testimony is not going to be read aloud for everyone here. So I'm not saying like one way is better than the other, just to think about that, that we may have more people wanting to join because we're not reading the testimony aloud and they don't feel like they're getting their voice heard in the same way.
Wow, what's the best way to do this?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Chris.
So yeah, I agree with a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing. I love the idea of getting public testimony, public comment back into the format. I worry about overcomplicating it. I think that if we start making it really complicated, people won't necessarily know what path to follow. So I like the idea of simplifying it to where you have written testimony that gets entered into the record, or somebody wants to come call in, or whatever format to get into where they can actually articulate in person or over the network their public testimony. I think having those two streams makes it really simple, makes it easy, and then will be a little more inviting than, if you're going to submit it, it has to be one page and, it has to be under 3 minutes, and then they might have to try to practice it or whatever. I think that we might be getting into a little bit of a mess there.
All right, thank you. Other thoughts and comments on this one?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Councilor Mullen, I see your point of making it a little daunting and then a little bit more stressful on staff too. So I would agree. I like the way that this is written, Alyssa. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one housekeeping type comment on the paper.
Okay.
So I was reading through it and it seemed a little bit confusing or contradictory in the public observation section versus the public body participation and the agenda updates and public participation. It doesn't quite explain in the same way for observation that you need to let city staff know like it does in the other two sections. And I'm thinking that we probably need people to know that even if you're not going to speak, that you probably need to let people know that you plan to attend in person so that we don't get too many people down at the community center. And then with that, I'm kind of wondering, do we need to set a limit in this paper of how many people will be allowed? And should we reserve some spaces for those that struggle with accessibility, whether that's like a physical disability or a financial barrier of accessing equipment?
Oh.
Mr. Mayor, I want to kind of add to what Councilor Hook is saying there, because One of the things I've noticed that a lot of places that are allowing people in, and if we get into a real content heavy where people are going to want to show up, you might need somebody at the door that's actually counting heads. Like if we only allow 10 people or we only allow 15 people, somebody that almost acts as a, you know, I don't want to use the word bouncer, but somebody that's kind of managing who's coming in and that there's, we're keeping 6 foot social distancing, that they have masks and all that kind of stuff. You need someone there to kind of manage that at the door.
This is probably a step backwards, but Alyssa, how difficult would it be if we had people there in this community center to put them in front of the camera for their 3-minute spiel? How difficult is
We actually had this discussion in what would we do if we were to have someone show up. And that's part of the reason why you'll see in there that we expanded the notification time to 3 hours before the meeting, because we're going to have to set up a separate computer for them to be basically what we were talking about is putting a computer on the podium that they can speak into. And then if we have people in between, like if we had multiple people, we would need to have somebody who can wipe down and sanitize the space and just and ensuring that, I mean, we right now, if you were in this room, I'm looking at, there's chairs set up and they're all 6 feet apart. And we've been having discussions of how could we set up the community center to handle more people if we were to go back to in-person meetings, and or just having people come to the meetings to speak. So
not as
Yeah.
okay,
that's what I thought it would be. Yeah,
you come on, got Keith.
I'm making it more difficult.
No, I think what Alyssa's talking about, and I have a crude drawing at City Hall, but we've been talking about even when we do go back to normal times, right? To really relook at how we use the space and to make it more accessible and to have more room. So we're going to be looking at how to reconfigure this room and to have it, and we'll have to do that to begin with. If we're going to do anything in person, just so we have more easy access in and out and more space to have people in here. But I think even going forward, looking at a way that we can set up the council chambers to be more open, more inviting, and not have situations where we did have community meetings where we're trying to open up walls and we're trying to set up seats. That we can just have it whenever we get back to pre-COVID, where we could have plenty of room for people to be here. And then also it would not be as distracting if people come and go as agenda items happen, right? So we had some ideas, and I think we're going to look at how to do that and how to make it happen. So, but these are all discussions we're having, going forward. But in our current space right now, and the way we had our council chamber set up, when you start getting into the 6 feet space and staff here, it became really constricting on the number of people we could have here. So I think we're going to have to look at just the whole community center and then try to make adjustments. And that's the conversations we've been having as well.
And just a question then to the group: can we do anything with this tonight? Is this something that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, one more thing I just kind of thought about. I think that there are those in the community that don't necessarily agree that wearing a mask is necessary. Even as far as those that might say that the entire pandemic might be a hoax. And what I'd be concerned about with people or opening up the window where people can come in and do testimony is if they communicate with you in 3 hours in advance, they show up, they're not wearing a mask, and we say, no, you're not allowed in without a mask. Are we then getting into some political issues of not allowing public testimony because it just seems like we might be opening a little bit of a Pandora's box now that I'm thinking about this a little bit more. And it seems to me that everybody has a phone. And so if we're allowing audio phone calls to come in for public testimony, maybe that's the safest. And then on top of that, the sanitization of the microphone and all of that, I wonder, maybe I'm not saying we don't, but maybe we don't, maybe we don't have that in there where people can come down there in person yet. at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I somewhat agree with Councilor Mullen here. I think that it could be opening up, for issues, and possibly put the staff in an unsafe position. I would like make sure that if we do kind of pull away from in-person testimony, that we still leave it open for anyone that expresses that they have a financial barrier to equipment to join, whether that's by phone or video, or if they have a physical disability that makes it very hard for them to use that type of equipment. Just some people just don't understand how to use, technology because they just don't access it often, or they're not able to access it. And with that, I was hoping that we could provide a portion in this document that talks about if they need some type of translation service, that they need to give advance notice. I don't think that I saw that in there, but I think that we definitely need to still reach out for any type of translation services that are needed, whether that's Spanish or American Sign Language. And I'd really like to see these instructions go out in Spanish, and our agenda still be in Spanish. I've brought this up before because our Latinx community in Stayton is, over 15%. And I really want them to, they're already disproportionately affected by COVID-19. The data shows that, and I want to make sure that we are including them in the language that they understand. So I know that Microsoft Office, Google Translate will translate documents, and it does a pretty good job. The Oregon State Capitol uses it in their administration as a good enough way to translate. And I think that right now that it's COVID-19, I think that would be probably better than nothing at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Again, what should we do with this tonight? What do you folks want to do?
Mr. Mayor, it almost sounds like maybe a third option, which is to take some of this input. I hate to do this, but add some of this language, because I know we've got it in there where we can say do the following with the following amendments, but it sounds like we have a lot of different amendments that we want to capture. And so maybe the council members want to see another draft of this with some of the input. I don't know.
Does the telephone?
Mr. Mayor?
Just a minute, please.
Okay.
Does the telephone input seem like the easiest, the simplest way to get some input into these meetings from the community?
So, go ahead.
Without the in-person and the extra technology. Let's see what that goes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So with the just to answer that, with the phone and the video, what we would do is provide the community member with Zoom has phone numbers that you can call in on, and so we can admit them from the waiting room, let them do their 3 minutes, and then we would move them back into the waiting room, or we can disconnect them in order to keep this still closed down and kind of a secure format for us. And it would be the same thing for the video as well.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Hook wanted to jump in there.
Councilor Ort, Mayor.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I like the video and audio conference calls. I think that is a fair alternative to what we've been doing, and allows people to have those options. And I think that I would agree saving the in-person participation. I'd like to maybe see that, so we were allowing people to come in person, but I would say reserving that in-person participation because of, you know, technical difficulties and whatnot for those that, you know, have a reason why they can't, you know, call in or audio in or have a disability of some sort. I think reserving it just for those people to kind of cut down on that, because everyone else has that option. So if you do have a community member that just, they don't have that as an option, then coming down in person and then adhering to that, I think would be our best option.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think that personally, I would like to see us get something in place tonight that at least allows for the phone and video, and then still come back the next meeting with a new draft that takes in, that incorporates some of the other feedback. I don't think that we have to have a perfect document to open up public comment for the very next meeting. And then just, you know, knowing that we do need to incorporate, you know, more of this stuff in a second draft. That's at least what I would like to see, so that we can at least actually make, you know, some type of a decision tonight and then still improve the policy for future meetings.
All right, let's go ahead with a motion then. Someone jump in on something here. Probably that's
I would agree with that. Okay, so oh, where is it? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we add in to the public hearing items number 2. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Number 2, and not change the rest of the document unless it state, oh goodness. Okay, I'm gonna rescind that. Okay, I make a motion that we add in to these temporary rules the video or audio conference call option tonight and approve that. And then we come back and maybe even have a work session or whatnot and hash out the rest of it.
okay. So I've got a motion to approve the revised COVID-19 public meeting procedures as amended by adding audio and video participation by the public. Is that pretty close to what you wanted? Oh, with
Yes.
further work in the near future.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, before we second, can I get a point of clarification?
Sure.
So on that motion, are we saying that we're leaving out item 6B3, which is the participate in person? We're saying leave that entire paragraph off at this point.
I think for this motion, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that needs a little bit more hashing out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then I will second.
Okay. So I've got a motion and a second to approve the revised COVID-19 public meeting procedures as amended. And Alyssa, you've got those changes written down?
I do. I wanted to point out just that also what was updated in under the public hearing was also allowing the in-person video and audio. So I want to, because if there's a public hearing, they would be able to come in still.
Okay. Is that all right with, is that where the group wants to be on that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think that was really my only point of discussion that I wanted to have, was to make sure that this made sense to Alyssa, that she had clear instruction, and that it wasn't that the motion was inclusive enough that there weren't little parts that needed to actually be added in there. And if so, maybe we could get some guidance on how to amend that motion to have it make sense for her to create the document.
Okay. I guess that question was, or comment was directed at you, Alyssa.
Sure.
Are you okay with that? Do you understand where Councilor Hook was going with that?
Yes, I do. And I want to make sure, I guess for me, I just want to make sure that, because there were changes, there's a public comment section and then there's the public hearing section. And so I just want to make sure that we are, I know right now we're talking about the public comment section only is what I'm hearing in the motion.
Alyssa, for clarification, are you looking at C3?
Yes.
It says participate in the meeting via video or conference. So if we don't change that, it still says you have access. You access a phone to call into the meeting via conference call line.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do not change that for a public hearing, you still have the option to call in.
Yes. Okay.
Is that correct?
I think so. I have to look.
Mr. Mayor?
Mostly this is providing audio and video input into our meetings, into these virtual meetings.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilor, I just want to make sure that if I am understanding right, your motion is including B2 and C2, which that we would include those changes, so that encompasses all of the video and conference call portion, but no changes to really anything else in regards to in-person participation.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the public, for a public hearing, we already have the option right now that people can call in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already there in the public hearing section that the people can call in. So yes, so B2 and C2 are what I would like to be added at this time.
And then all other changes
We can talk about.
Okay.
I mean, keeping with the understanding that this is still a living document at this point, but to make these changes to accommodate the video and audio.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then we'll bring it back at, say, the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on this motion? Is there any discussion? Any more discussion?
I just want to real quick, Mr. Mayor, to just advocate for this, and I think I would like to see this happen at this meeting so that we can, so that we don't delay hearing from our citizens any longer. Again, obviously we have the written testimony portion of it, but I really feel like something's lost when we don't hear the voices of our community, and I would really like to have this put into play moving forward.
Something's been lost in this whole last 6 months of these meetings. We know that. This has not been a happy time for anyone. Certainly not for us. Let's go to a vote then on this. If you folks are done with the discussion. Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Sure. Councillor McDonald?
Yes.
Councillor Ort?
Yes.
Councillor Hook?
Yes.
Councillor Mullen?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Next thing this evening is a discussion on a city attorney discussion. And we, at a request last meeting, we agreed to access for the city attorney. And I agreed that we could have the discussion. I don't believe we're going to take any action on this tonight, but we can certainly talk about it. You got to read the staff report on it. I guess if the concern is having those folks come up from Eugene for every meeting or one meeting a month or one meeting every 6 months, you've all read that we went through this a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where individual counselors had access to the city attorney, and we found, and this always costs money, no matter who calls them, and we found people accessing the attorney for, yeah, let's say mostly their own legal concerns. And it was exhausting the budget, and it just wasn't the right thing to do. And so we went away from that. So there are some pretty good reasons. It's not just to keep anybody out, but there just were some good reasons for limiting who could talk to them and how much access and how often we needed them at meetings. And so you've got the numbers in front of you. It's what, $560 some a meeting to have them here. And it just, it keeps that budget intact when we don't have everyone. Not to say that anyone here would, but it has happened before. We had a couple of council members who insisted on asking personal legal questions of our attorney. Not a good thing.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Go ahead.
So I wanted to point out that first off, that we should come up with a way that we can avoid that kind of contact with the city attorney in the future, because that is absolutely inappropriate use of taxpayer dollars. But also by having the city attorney there a little bit more often, you know, those numbers are nothing compared to what they could be if we get hit with a lawsuit because, you know, we needed legal advice on something, we didn't have the appropriate access, and then we, you know, made a decision that wasn't good. Again, like, Keith is not a lawyer. He's extremely intelligent, but that's not fair to put on Keith to have to answer to the best of his ability some of these legal questions. So I think that we definitely should have some type of a process of how you go about asking, like perhaps a counselor would need to get the approval of the mayor or the council president to contact the city attorney. That way there's at least 2 avenues for them to get that approval to make the contact. Or that, you know, the mayor or the council president could, like, you know, consult with Keith whether they thought that was a good use of funds. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. I just think that there should be some type of an avenue where if we do have a quick question that we want to ask the city attorney, instead of having them come down to a meeting, if a quick phone call would answer a question, that option should be available.
That's the way it works now. If you've got a question that needs to go to them, you could call me, you could call Chris, you could call Keith.
But then you're playing telephone, aren't you? You're going, Chris, can you please ask the city attorney, blah, 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 blah. And then they come back and then you have a follow-up question. And then Chris has to call them back and do the follow-up question.
What we do is we organize our questions so that we don't have to do follow-ups. Or
yeah, but if you don't have the information, Mr. Mayor, if you don't even understand like one of the topics enough to know what the next question might be, follow-ups happen. I know that you're not a fan of them, with respectfully, but they happen and they're going to continue to happen. And so I would like access so that, you know, I can ask a question. I can't even foresee a time when I would need to call the city attorney, but I think that having that access there is important. And having them at the meetings once in a while when we're going to have really heavy topics that could put the city at risk is important as well. I don't know if it needs to be monthly, maybe quarterly or every 6 months that we stack these things that are heavy, heavy in legalese. But I do think that we need more access.
We,
Mr. Mayor,
we as a group, okay. Chris, I see a face in front of me. Go ahead, Chris, Mr. Mullen.
Yeah, just real quick. Keith, if you or the mayor or the city council president calls, do we get charged for that time, that phone time with the attorney?
Yes, we get
And is it
charged.
rounded up to like 15-minute, or how is that
Yes,
calculated?
it's 15-minute increments. So a 1-minute call is a 15-minute call. And the hourly rate is 195. So it's basically based on that. So every 15 minutes every minute over 15 is a new. So 16 minutes would be 30 minutes,
Yeah,
et cetera.
I thought so. I just wanted to verify. And then the follow-up to that is, if we have an agenda item that so we get the agenda, we're looking through it as a council, one of the council members goes, hey, this seems like one of those things that we're going to want the city attorney. How does that council member get their voice heard to see if we can have the attorney present for that agenda item that Monday night? Like, how would they do that?
Yeah, I think I think there's 3 ways. It'd be going through you, it'd be going through the mayor, it'd be going through me. I think one of the things I do want to say is this is the council's attorney. Ultimately, those decisions would be that. We have asked in the past. I think with Zoom and new technology, maybe that would be a better way of trying to manage this. Even if we would go to more normal meetings to see if Zooming would potentially be an option to do that. I'd be happy to answer questions on thoughts and all that. I really I don't want to get too involved because I don't want to feel like I'm influencing your actions or decisions on this, but I think that's would be another option we could try, is to see if they'd be willing to Zoom in, or just Zoom in for that portion of the meeting that we would need them for. Especially like land use hearings would be a good one, or something like that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just can I throw in something first, just for a minute, Counselor? Notice in that background information, second paragraph, the city's legal counsel, local government law group, LGLG, has a policy that only the mayor and city manager may engage the city attorney on behalf of the city. It's their policy as well as ours. So we need to work around that if we're going to do something there. Counselor, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I have a lot of trust in Keith's opinions on what he thinks might be a good thing to have the city attorney there for. He's done that in the past very well. And so I don't necessarily feel like I, as a counselor, am going to constantly need to like go and say, hey, Keith, can we have the city attorney for this thing? If, Keith already has the I don't know, like the freedom to know that, he can make those decisions or those choices for us, knowing, our abilities as a council to understand some of the really complex topics that come forward. So I don't necessarily need it to be that I can directly access the city attorney. I just really need there to be access when there are heavy topics that put the city at risk with some of our lack of knowledge of some of this stuff. So and I think Zoom is a great idea, COVID or not, having the city attorney there, or even over the phone.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Keith, if the city attorney were contacted by an individual counselor regarding a personal matter, would the city attorney have the ability to tell them this is a personal matter and not pertain to the city business, and not answer the question?
It's hard for me to say what LG would do. I can just say what their preference was, as per the policy. Generally speaking, I think history has been that and this is their policy. I can't say how they would act if one of you were to contact them, but I could say in the past, we did have situations where someone would contact the city attorney. The city attorney would then engage in the work that would be done to answer the question. So, it's hard for me to say exactly what they do. All I can say is what they requested when the contract was signed was that just the mayor and the city manager. I asked for them to also allow the council president, just because I felt like that was the representative of the council, and they agreed to that at the time. And also just sort of that checks and balances. So it's hard for me to say if somebody other than one of those three reached out what they would do. I just know traditionally if somebody has reached out from like staff without including me on the message, generally speaking, the attorney will come to me and say, is this an approved item? Which just takes a little more time, but staff has gotten better. We've had communication where they just include me on those things where I know it's going out the attorney, so I can, it's kind of a tacit approval, if you will. And we do try to be careful on engaging just so we don't incur significant costs.
Thank you, Keith.
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
Keith, do you know if LGLG has other communities that they actually attend meetings on a regular basis at all? I'm not talking about every meeting or every other, like once a quarter or once or twice a year or anything like that.
I think they represent about 100 local taxing entities, from fire departments to other local cities. I mean, it is one advantage that we've had, is we're able to get information that is kind of being done through other entities. But I think their policy generally is not to go to meetings just because of the number of entities that they would have. It would be challenging for them just to appear without more planning ahead, or the ability to be able to do that. So I just think it's one of the challenges with the number of entities that they represent, for them just to be a regular attendee per se without having some ability to plan ahead or to limit the number of times that they're here.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I have another question real quick, Councilor Hook. So this is for the mayor and for Keith and for Councilor Mullen. And I'm not saying that you would do this, but what happens if one of you or all of you decide that the questions that one of the other counselor has isn't applicable? We think that it is. Any of us, we think that it is, and you decide not to take it forward to the attorney. What are we able to do then to get that answered if we firmly believe that that is something that should go to the attorney?
So I would start by saying, as the council president, it's not for me to make that determination, right? Like, I might consult Keith, but if a council member's asking me to call city attorney for something, I'm going to make that phone call. But I think the question is valid in that if there's a council president that says, you know what, I don't think that's worth it, I'll call the mayor, I'll talk to Keith, and then I'll get back with them and, tell them I'm not going to call, then I think that that's a completely different issue. And of course, it shouldn't be personality based, right? Like there should be a process. If the council president isn't following, and it, I think it's a bigger question than just the council president. But from my perspective, if you're asking the council president to call the attorney, they should be calling the attorney.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, let me answer that from my perspective. Needs to be an element of trust in this. If you call and say you've got a question that needs to go to the city attorney, I might call Keith and see what he thinks of it, but I'll probably make that call also because it was important to you, and then get back to you. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate those answers.
Council?
Mr. Mayor.
Council?
Yeah, so I have full trust that with the current council president and the current mayor that our questions are going to be, taken to the city attorney. I don't know that, every single term the residents are going to elect any of us for another term. And so that puts, I mean, we've seen what kind of diversity we've had on the council before. And so I think that just for the safety of, when councilors change, having a clear process of how we can make sure that our voice is heard is good. And I think what I am wondering, and that may clear up some of this 15-minute increment thing, is can we have it be a conference call where the discussion is led by the mayor, led by the council president, but the counselor can be on the call and do kind of the same thing where you go, like Mr. Mayor, and if you need to have a clarification on your question. And then that way, I know that we've had the city attorney do a conference call with the council before in some other meeting. I can't remember which one it was, but I just think that it would be nice to kind of cut out, the back and forth telephone play that then racks up the bills at 15-minute increments at a time. If we could just have that quick phone call together. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. That's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Anyone else on this? There we go. Councilor Roy.
Yes. Councilor Hook, I actually like that idea. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, so if we go to one of the three people that are allowed to contact, but if we say, hey, I have a question, can we do a three-way or conference call together? And that way they make the contact. We can talk about whatever it is, and they make the contact, and then we get to ask our question, but it's facilitated by one of the three people that are supposed to be contacting. And that way, again, if there's a follow-up, because to be completely honest, I don't always know if, when I'm reading an agenda, I don't always know if this is something that needs to be clarified by the attorney, or if a question comes up and it's like, well, that's a question for our attorney, but then we are making a decision that night. Well, I mean, if I honestly feel like if something that we ask then triggers that comment, then that should probably be the end of the discussion until we get the answer. That's a personal opinion of mine, but I really do like the idea that if we have something, and then that way that could alleviate, calling and asking, personal questions.
I guess I want to say something here really quick, which is, we've had conversations with the city attorney, which I would say are background or clarifying questions, but the city attorney, this city attorney has never just responded to me verbally. So any conversation or questions asked, there might be some clarifying questions, but the material is always sent via email back with his formal response. The other thing about this attorney, and you guys are aware, is they don't want their information disseminated, right? It's an opinion, but it's not a public, and that's just been how this entity works. So I think, I just want to be clear that there wouldn't be just a phone call and then a quick answer. This would be something that would be done where an email response would come, and it wouldn't, it's basically put under a attorney-client privilege information and not to be communicated or shared outside of that realm. So I want realistic expectations about what to expect when that happens. The city attorney may ask some clarifying questions on that, but always goes back and I would say does the due diligence to give a more formal legal answer. And one of the challenges has been we can't necessarily just share that opinion publicly.
No easy off the cuff answers to things.
Well, to be fair, I think that's, the city attorney wants to be diligent. I can harken back to my days in elections. When I was in elections, I knew those laws pretty well, but my generic comment was, here's what I think, but I will get back to you and get back to you in formal writing, right, with the actual statutes and things related to your question. So I would say, it's just good to be cautious in that way. and to have a realistic expectation about what the communication is like with the attorney, and how that dialogue works and what you should expect in return as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I think that's a great point that Keith has brought up. I think that it still would be useful to have like that conference call between the council president or the mayor and the councilor that has the question, just because the way that we present the question may not be clear to the city attorney, and they may have a follow-up question of like, well, what do they mean? Under what context are you talking about? So we still might not get an answer, but at least we'd have that connection where we could immediately give more context to what we're talking about, and then they could still respond, you know, via paper and, you know, all that confidentiality, but at least we're not, you know, having to go back and continually call them to get, you know, the answer or to get information that we're looking for. We don't want to get you know, we don't want to come up with, you know, information that we never even were really asking for because we didn't even know how to ask the question properly.
There's some of that. There's some of that. Understand. Okay. Well, this is discussion
Mr.
item.
Mayor?
So should we move on?
Well, I do. So I have a question. So this item has stemmed from, obviously, if we have a question beforehand that we know we need legal counsel, then we know the avenues. We can ask the mayor, the city manager, and the council president. Okay, that's totally understandable. If maybe we can like ask the question, it can be forwarded to them and CC'd to us as well, and then we can have that follow-up open communication. Okay, fine, we can do that over email. It's an opinion, and we can get our questions answered. What do we do, and this is a question for my fellow counselors, what do we do as counselors when we are in the middle of a meeting right now and something happens to where it's like, well, we would need legal counsel to answer that. So what are we going to do in that situation?
Mr. Mayor?
It's after hours.
Mr. Mayor?
You're not going to get an answer right now. Go ahead, Counselor.
Yeah, so we've actually had that happen, and what we'll do is we'll kick out that agenda item pending legal counsel.
That's what you have to do.
I mean, we do that sometimes, but that doesn't happen all the time. And I would say specifically with items where we might know that, you know, there might be some legal questions, it would be nice to have the city attorney available. I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr.
sorry, go ahead.
So I agree with Councilor Ort that I still would like to see the city attorney there once in a while when Keith feels like it's a heavy enough topic that it might be good for the good of the city to have them there. And I also, you know, do agree that, you know, we have had times where, you know, one of us has had questions, and what if we're on one of those deadlines that comes with the planning decisions where we've already kicked it out and we're at the due date? Can we make it so that on, you know, when we've actually come to like a place where we have to make a decision, we can't kick it out anymore, can we have the city attorney there on those dates?
That's a possibility. Okay. Yeah. Something to discuss down the road a little bit. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Some valid points. Now, remember now, this isn't another city that we're going to compare to on having these people accessible. And they're pretty accessible most of the time when we've needed answers, I hope. Go ahead, Counselor.
So, Mr. Mayor, so some of my frustration comes from if we're in the middle of a meeting and a counselor has a question that becomes a legal question that can't be answered by any of the city staff, and can only be answered by legal counsel, well, then that particular counselor is then at the mercy of the rest of the council to decide whether or not, you know, if the rest of the council wants to move forward then you don't get your questions answered, or you don't have that ability to get that information, and maybe that would have been something good for the whole council to hear.
Now think about this for a second now. No one anticipated that we were going to need a legal question answered before the meeting. This came out of the blue. Totally unexpected.
Mhm.
And I would agree that we ought to do something. Probably we'd have to defer the question, even though that's not the easy and it's not even the right thing to do most of the time. But you're either going to have them there every meeting anticipating a problem, or just go with the system that we've got.
Mr. Mayor.
You can't be saving money and spending $500 every 2 weeks on having legal counsel there. We can't anyway. Go ahead, Counselor.
Yeah, so I think that one of the options for a counselor would be to abstain from the vote, also on the grounds that they are not comfortable with not having legal representation for questions that they have. But I think also what I'm hearing counselor or possibly say is, this has happened in the past where we have moved something forward when someone has expressed that they weren't comfortable not having, legal advice on something. So I'm also looking, for the guarantee that, if a counselor expresses, that they're concerned about, not having legal representation there to ask these questions that they have on the spot, that the rest of the council, respects that and moves it to the next meeting when we can have legal representation, or when we can get that question answered, outside of the meeting with an answer for the next meeting.
That's what we should be doing. Yeah.
But we haven't always done that.
Okay. And we have a certain number of abstentions anyway. We have certain patterns of people abstaining from questions because they're uncomfortable with their ability to vote. So that's the way we learn to accept that. Let's move along if we can. This will come up again, but there's nothing we can do with it tonight. So, pool reopening update, staff report. Susanna?
I am bringing her on right now. Oh. There she is. All right.
Here I am.
Go for it.
Do I have the power to share my screen?
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead on.
Let me do that really quick and make you
Okay.
a co-host.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to do it now, Susanna.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My topic this evening to share with you is an update on how things have gone with the pool since it reopened on July 20th with the restrictions due to the COVID pandemic. So I'm going to start with the attendance report that's in your council packet. So with our restrictions, the pool is currently open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 2, with a certain number of classes available with restrictions on how many can be in each class. So what this report that's in your packet is the classes that are currently being offered and how many attended at each one for the 16 days that the pool was actually open from July 20th through August 11th, that Monday. So that's where these reports are reading those dates. And you can see that the total of attending and the average attendance and the max allowed in each class. Some of these classes happen more than once a week. For example, the water movement, there's 32 classes that were held. So that's what that white line is there at the bottom, just kind of telling you how many classes they had available for this time frame. So our attendance is just under 50% for what the capacity that the pool could have for these classes with our restrictions. So this gives you a chance to kind of see that attendance. The other page, I'm going to rotate this real quick. Oops, gosh, I got to learn how to rotate the right direction. So one of the things that Billy and I worked on while the pool was closed is improving the software's ability to give us data. So we've done some changes, and Billy's worked really hard to dig into the weeds of how to make these changes that we felt was important to kind of track this more efficiently. So this is our changes we made to see more detailed of exactly what type of memberships we have in there, what type of memberships are showing up to the courses. So this is going to be really important data going forward as we move our class choices based on attendance. So just to give you that information as well. So at this point, as of these 16 days, we've collected $1,800 in revenue. We've had 28 members return to the pool, which is about 5% because we were over 600-ish members before we had to close down. So we have a small percentage has come back so far. And we have, our expenditures are $14,000 from the beginning of the pool opening, or actually from July 1st till of August 11th is what we've spent. And 9 of those members are non-residents that's come in from other communities, and then 19 of actual Stayton members. And so that's kind of where the status is at this point. So do you have any questions?
Go ahead, somebody.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
Susanna, what does it cost for the month when we're closed? Or like if we were to shut down completely, what are our total expenditures for a month?
So we spend about $13,000 to $15,000 a month on the basics of the pool electricity and a basic staff member to be keeping chemicals checked and that kind of stuff. For April, May, and June, that's about what they averaged out to, was about $14,000 for those 3 months.
So to clarify, the 14,000 is what it averaged out to be when nobody was using the pool.
Correct.
Well, so that's a fixed cost for that.
Yes.
For that thing to be.
Because yeah, because if I look at the expenditures that I broke out, we spent 14,000 in April, 18,000 in May, and 22,000 in June, being 10,000 of that was for the unemployment.
I'll take them out.
And the pool's on, the electricity's going, the pumps are running. Once we have a staff member in there monitoring things.
A follow-up question. So the 14,000, this doesn't take into account the staff that it took to facilitate the classes, like any of the teachers for the classes.
The 14,000 there, yes, that is July 1st through the first week of August. So that 14 is, yes. That did include the staff that did these classes right here.
Okay, but then I guess I'm just a little confused, and I apologize if I'm making this confusing. So it was $14,000 to run the pool for the month of July, but I'm trying to figure out how much it would cost us if we closed the pool.
14, about that. Because you have to remember, we didn't have that much staff come in yet. This 14,000 only has 16 days of staff. So this money, that's gonna go up.
Okay.
next month because you've got the rest of the staff in there, right? So
Okay.
this is all the hard cost and only 14 days of additional staff. So next month, this is going to be higher because once you get August's payroll in there, it's going to be higher. If I just, so does that make sense?
Yes, I just the info. I mean, I appreciate the information and the time you took in this. It's just hard to digest the information. It's not, and this isn't your fault. It's just not complete in terms of trying to, you know, discern the information. Mr. Mayor, do you have another question? Susanna, so the pool closes at 2. Are we anticipating adding any other classes like later in the day after the workday is done? Or, I mean, statistically speaking, we usually have, I would say, swimming lessons and whatnot, but are we going to be adding any classes so that people who work during the workday are able to participate in using the pool?
At this point, we aren't going to make any changes to the schedule. The pool closes on August 24th for its annual routine maintenance and will stay closed till September 7th. We are looking at the classes that got the most attendance, and we will be bringing back those classes that, if I come back up here, bringing back the classes that had the highest attendance. So for example, the deep plunge will disappear because we're not getting enough attendance to hold that class open with the staff. We will be adding more water movement because that's a very popular one and that one's staying closer. So we'll be really assessing that with the next 2 weeks data as well to determine what classes we will be available. We're not going to expand hours the pool is opened because we start to tilt the scale more to go on top of that hard cost with additional staff, with the revenue being so low. And we'll just kind of have to play it quarter by quarter on what we can do and staying in the parameters that is required for safety for the members that come to the pool as well as the staff.
Okay. And then one more question, Susanna. So Councillor Hook had mentioned, and sorry if I'm taking your question, Councillor Hook, but she had mentioned that she knew of at least one community member that was having a hard time getting in to log into a class. Do we know if that's still an issue and possibly people that might not have been able to attend a class because of that?
I did follow up on that, and if there's anyone who was having trouble with online, they just need to call the pool and they will put it in there. They've gone above and aboard helping them get the app on their phones or helping them get set up and that kind of thing. This attendance is now showing us which classes are popular so we can make changes. I mean, the water movement is the one that's real popular and they all want the same time. There's nothing we can do about that. We're here to meet the needs of the entire community. So they'll have to adjust the times they want to go, and that's why we're going to be looking at changing the schedule to take out the courses that were not popular and putting more times for the ones that were to help that adjustment so that these classes are driven by attendance. So that should help as well.
Okay. Susanna, since all of us know how to refer those questions from community members about access to the pool, we know how to refer those questions. There's probably, it's all right, but no real need to bring those kinds of questions to council because we know how to refer them, right?
Yeah, Billy is really passionate to make sure everyone who wants to use the pool and feels safe to go gets in there. So I have been on the phone with her while she's had to set it down and I've listened to her walk people through what to do and help. So she's very passionate. So as long as you contact the pool, they'll make sure that they get in there.
All right, good.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, questions. Go ahead, Councilor.
So I had followed up with the community member and told them to call the pool, and I let them know that, you know, if they had any issues, please reach back out to me. They did not reach back out to me, so I'm under the assumption that they called Billy and they got the answers that they needed. So I'm satisfied with that portion of this pool process.
Okay, good.
One of the adjustments we also may make to the schedule in September is to open earlier and close earlier to stay in the parameters of the weekly hours that we're looking for, but allow those people who want to come in and do water movement at 6 a.m. instead of 7. And we'll be making that final decisions during the close so we can pull this new data and look at what's happening with the classes.
Okay, good. All right. Is there anything else, Susanna? What else what is, other than, we are constantly reminded that pools are an expensive proposition, and we see that in just almost any number we see.
Yeah, the electricity alone is like almost $3,000 a month.
What's the gas bill for the boiler?
The gas bill for June, for example, where's June's? Well, here's May's. May's sitting here, Mike.
Well, I don't think May we weren't using it in May, were we? Maybe we were. Whatever.
The gas bill for the month of May was $1,400, and the electrical bill was $21, so a little bit lower. And I think June's was. So that's kind of where it lands, and that's why I'm telling you the average hard cost is about that. If I was to compare this time last year to this year, you can see this time last year for June of last year, we spent $33,000 in expenses for the month. This year we've done, well, if you take out the unemployment because that's a special situation, we've done 13. So you can kind of see the difference. In May, we spent $28,000 in expenses. May of this year, we spent 18.
Well, yeah, the thing is.
That's why the base is around 14. You're not going to really go under 14,000 a month in base expenses.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Other questions? Quick thoughts? The 9 o'clock hour approaches. I'm ready to call it an evening if you folks are. And the 1 and the 2 and the 3, let's go home. Good night and thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Melissa, are you still there or where'd she go?